A while back, when talking about certain things like October 7th and the fact that my family chooses to eat halal meat based on the stipulations in the Bible of how we are to treat animals and also how we are to eat meat. So we cannot eat meat that still has the blood in it, and we are not allowed to eat meat that has of an animal that has been strangled. Well, when we were discerning this together, which actually was right around the time of October 7th, we had discerned that there were a lot of additions to the scroll within Judaism, or what is calling itself Judaism right now, and within kosher, such as soaking meat in salt. And so we didn't trust, and still don't trust, that the stipulations are being observed because there are so many additions to the scroll within what is calling itself Judaism right now. So we decided to eat halal. And I received a lot of really nasty messages from people who assume that Allah is a false god. Allah means God in Arabic. That's all it means. It's not a false god. It's not the name of Brahma, for example, like the name of someone's god. It's just God. That's what it means in Arabic. So I want to talk about these so-called Abrahamic religions and this God, because someone emailed me and has been asking me this question, or is asking me this question about my statement that we all worship the same God. That's technically an incorrect statement, and I apologize for the misunderstanding, because I did not intend on implying that we all have the same premise regarding our God. What I was actually saying or alluding to is that if you're going to say that Muslims are worshiping a false god, then you also need to say that about what is calling itself Judaism, that they do not worship the same God, and those within Christianity who are worshiping in counterfeit churches, who have a different gospel, then all of them are worshiping a false god as well. What's their God called? So technically that's correct. And he provided, when he sent me his email, provided several scriptures. So I'm going to read them and we're going to talk about them. 2 John 1, 6 through 11. I say this because many deceivers who do not acknowledge Jesus Christ as coming in the flesh have gone out into the world. Any such person is the deceiver and the Antichrist. And that's correct. That's exactly what I tell you about the Antichrist, right? It's false religion. Watch out that you do not lose what we have worked for, but that you may be rewarded fully. Anyone who runs ahead and does not continue in the teachings of Christ does not have God. Whoever continues in the teachings has both the Father and the Son. If anyone comes to you and does not bring this teaching, do not take them into your house or welcome them. Anyone who welcomes them shares in their wicked work. So, am I suggesting that we have the same religion? Am I suggesting that they have a gospel that will save? No, I'm not suggesting any of that, and that's on me. I had an understanding in my own heart about what it was that I was talking about. Hopefully I made it clear in the videos with regard to what I was specifically addressing, the issue of whether or not Allah is a false god. From that context, if I say whatever, I don't know, how do you say God in Chinese, or how do you say God in any other language? Then what you're saying, if that's what you're saying, then okay, well, the contingency in your mind as to what determines God is that it's spoken in one language, that the word God, because that's not his name, but the word God, that is spoken in one specific language. That was what I was saying. They claim to worship in the God of Abraham. They claim to worship one God, monotheistic God, just like Christians do, just like Jews do, or those calling themselves Jews. However, this person is correct. If you're not worshiping God based on who he is, you're not worshiping God. You're not worshiping the same God. So again, this would be like saying that within those calling themselves Christian, that we're worshiping a different God. Well, technically, we are. Because there are a lot of people within so-called Christianity who don't worship God based on who he has stated himself to be. They don't obey him. They don't observe what he has commanded. And they make up their different versions of God. So we're worshiping a different God. The crazy thing to me is that people are more concerned about the name that you're calling God than they are about what actually matters to his heart, which is what? The actual name. The name that he stated for himself, which was Hayah, which is his plan, his will, his purpose, his reason, all of the things that he has stated that we are to observe, suffer, obey, pick up on a daily basis. All of that, they'll disregard that, but they're super concerned about a word that people are using. Okay, let's look at this from another angle. Would you say that Christians worship a different God than those calling themselves Jews who have not accepted Jesus? Most people would not say that, but in the technical sense, we are worshiping a different God. Jesus said in the book of John that if you knew the Father, you would know that I'm from him. So he acknowledged that people who did not accept him don't know the Father. They can't. How can you know the Father if you don't accept the Messiah that he sent? If you don't accept his Son? If you don't accept what is a part of him? Who is a part of him? As a mother, I mean, any parent can understand this in the simplest form. If someone is treating your child like garbage, even to the point of looking for a way to kill them, do they know you? Are they a part of you? That, in fact, is more offensive to me than if someone did something directly to me. So this was the context with which I was addressing this. Now, let's look at this from another perspective. So Muslims, although they believe that Jesus is a prophet, they do not regard him as the Son of God. They don't believe that he is the Son of God. Therefore, you can't know God if you reject his Son, if you reject the Messiah. You can't possibly know God. But Jesus, there's a similar example in Scripture where Jesus was addressing the Samaritan woman at the well, and she believed that the Messiah was going to come, and she referenced it to Jesus in John 4. And she said, I know that when the Messiah comes, he's going to, make things clear. And Jesus said to her, you Samaritans don't know what you worship. Salvation is coming from the Jews. We know what we worship. Now, when Jesus said that, was he talking about all Jews? Well, he was, in the technical sense, a Jew is one who's circumcised in heart. He wasn't talking about all an ethnicity or all who are descended from Abraham, because in the same book of John, he said to a certain group of Jews, I know that you're descended from Abraham, so he acknowledged it. Yet you are looking for a way to kill me. You are children of your father who is the devil. Okay, so Jesus says to the Samaritan woman at the well, you don't know what you worship. And yet, Jesus stayed with the Samaritans 2 additional days, and he left his own people because of the unbelief of his own people and the potential of the Samaritans to actually accept the truth. This is also the context with which I was speaking, that Muslims they believe in Jesus as being a source of truth. They believe in him as being a prophet. They believe that he's going to come back. And to be honest, I think this is a little weird. In one way, they'll intellectualize, well, he couldn't have possibly been the Son of God. That's impossible and blah, blah, blah. But he's going to come back? How's that possible? That's a little weird to me. But, my intention is not to malign anybody or anyone's religion, but just to say, you want to use common sense in one context, but not in the whole context? That does not make sense to me. Actually, I should say carnal sense, not common sense. Anyway, none of that is anything, right? It's just by the Spirit. That's the only way you're going to know truth. So here is the point that I'm making, is that if a people acknowledge Jesus as being a source of truth, and they truly acknowledge him as being a source of truth, I'm not saying with lip service or in theory they acknowledge him as being a source of truth. What I'm saying is, if they believe that he is a source of truth, and I will use my own experience with this, I have believed in God. I was closer to being able to accept the full truth, because I have believed in God and I have believed that he had, this son, Jesus Christ, that Jesus is the Son of God. But I had misconceptions about who Jesus was. Was he just a good man? Is there some universal truth? Are we all talking about the same God? I mean, I had a lot of wonky, weird, stupid beliefs, and I needed to be brought into truth. And Jesus saw a potential there, and he stayed with the Samaritans for 2 additional days. So in the technical and literal sense, if you don't believe in the gospel that's been preached to you in the word and you have some other version, you are not a believer. You do not believe in God. You're not going to be saved. Paul already said it. He said, otherwise you will have believed in vain. And in the technical sense, all of us then do not believe in the same God. But the context that I was addressing was whether this was some outright identified false God or something like that, that whether Allah is some false God. No, Allah just means God. And in fact, it may interest you that many Muslims share descent with Jews and converted to Islam in Samaria. The battle that's going on right now is actually a battle between brothers and sisters, if you define that by descent. The battle that's going on right now is in part due to the sin of Samaria and the judgment that God promised. Does that mean I relish in it? Does that mean I say, oh, finish them? No, it's disgusting to me. It's disgusting that a people who call themselves chosen, who call themselves Jews, are persecuting their own, they know this, they should know this, their own brothers and sisters, and by the very justification that they use for being the chosen, which is descent, they're persecuting their own people. Okay, so in the same way, and a similar analogy, so many Christians say, oh, brother, sister, fellow servant. You're not my brother or sister or my fellow servant if you don't obey, if you don't do the things that God has said, even if we're descended from the same parent, even if we're both descended from Abraham, for example. You're only my family if you love God. Hopefully this helps you to understand the context with which I was speaking previously. And I'm grateful that this person asked these questions because it gave me an opportunity to clarify and to make clear the fulfillment of what it means to be a Christian, to worship the same God, to be of the same family, body, kingdom, house. So I was addressing this in a concrete or basic way, but this allowed me to go deeper and to address the fulfillment of it, the truth of it. When so-called Abrahamic religions, and I say so-called because there's only one Abrahamic religion, okay? There was Judaism. Judaism was promised a Messiah, and of those Jews who accepted the Messiah, they became Christians. They didn't continue to refer to themselves as practicing Judaism because the fulfillment of Judaism is implied in Christianity. The fulfillment of Judaism is that you accepted the Messiah who was promised to you. One Abrahamic religion, that Abraham would have been doing the same thing, accepting the Messiah who had been promised. Those who are Abraham's children are those who do what Abraham did. One Abrahamic religion. But there are three who claim to be the Abrahamic religions, and that is Christianity, Judaism, which is counterfeit Judaism, and Islam. They all claim to worship the same God. Probably it would have been the better way for me to have said that, is that they claim to worship the same God. Please discern this message with God and let me know if you have questions. Let's talk about it.